Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Darsh Shah.
And I'm Dr. Altamash Raja.
And welcome to Medicine Redefined,
a podcast where we will explore the often overlooked but necessary components of health, what we consider to be the fundamentals.
We will investigate topics and practices that can give you and your patients the best chance to optimize a healthy lifestyle. It's time to move the needle forward and put the health back in healthcare.
Before I introduce this week's guest, a quick story time brought to you by locumstory.com. Today, we'll be reading One Job, Two Job. One job, two jobs, red blob, no job. Elective doc, emergency doc, some in overstock, some in out of stock. This doc is too abused, this doc is underused. This doc can't get sick, say, let's try a brand new trick. For all the docs about to cry, here's an idea you can try. Look into locum tenens assignment, a really great option, you might find it. Don't forget locums pays much better, and you can find assignments in any type of weather. With all this new info trapped up in your thinker, go to financialresidency.com/locumstory and use your mouse to tinker. It's here you'll find the unbiased answers you're after, so you can decide if locum tenens is your next chapter. This week's guest is Jay Ferruggia. Jay is a highly sought-after, world-renowned strength and conditioning specialist and transformation expert. Over the past 25 years, he's personally trained close to 1,000 athletes from various professional organizations, including the NCAA, NFL, NHL, and Major League Baseball. He's also worked exclusively with Hollywood stars and entertainers. But in addition to being a world-renowned coach, Jay is an entrepreneur, an author, and a speaker. Having helped shape the modern-day fitness industry, Jay is a pioneer in every sense of the word, although he prefers the term renegade. But in this show, we touch on several topics pertaining to health and fitness. Some of the things Jay talks about include execution with every rep and achieving mastery despite being an expert. We talk about working with the aging athlete, which is a lot of what his practice entails today, but of course he works with people in all phases of life. We continue on the theme of longevity training and how Jay incorporates cardiovascular exercise into his training programs. If you've been following Jay's work, you know he's basically synonymous with the word relentless. In fact, that's tattooed on his arm, but contrary to popular belief, he's a huge proponent of not going hard all the time. Obviously, one cannot have a discussion about longevity without touching on nutrition, so we do cover that and get his perspective on how he tackles that with his clients and athletes. Ultimately, you'll notice that this episode is a mix of a bunch of topics consolidated into an hour. The reason for that is that I've been following Jay closely for over a decade and have had the chance to work with him early in my career. So selfishly, I took this opportunity to ask him as many questions as I could and the things that I wanted to know about the evolution of his philosophy. My hope is that we'll have him back sometime in the future so we can dive deeper in some of these topics. But until then, you'll have to appreciate the small dose of the original renegade, Jay Ferruggia. Jay, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, super excited for this conversation. But first, I got to ask you, man, I know we quickly touched on that you've moved quite a bit. Last I checked, you were in Austin, but I understand that you moved again. Where are you at now?
Yeah, we're in Miami now. Austin was great. We just had to get out of Cali. Things were getting a little crazy. So we left. We went to Austin. We had some friends there. And it was good. It was funny because when we first got to Southern Cali, I was like, man, about a year into it, I was like, I wish we stopped and lived in a bunch of places for like 3 to 6 months, but we're never leaving Cali, so it's too late. That ship has sailed. But, then nobody saw 2020 coming. So now we got to do that. We lived in Austin for 6 months. Now we're living in Miami. I'm not sure what we're going to do next.
I love it, man. That's awesome. Yeah. So you're enjoying it there, huh?
So far, it's good. Yeah. I mean, I think I'll always compare everything to Southern Cali, living on the beach there. The 10 years we had there was epic, but it's good.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. So it almost seems a bit silly for me to ask this question because, I've been following your work for such a long time. You're an author, you're a speaker, you're so well recognized, I think, in the field of health and wellness. But for some of my colleagues who might be listening to this, they might not know your story as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your kind of journey into health and wellness and kind of what is it that you do?
Yeah, so I was a stereotypical kind of just skinny, first fat, then skinny fat, kind of just, nerdy, unathletic kid. And I always watched Saturday morning. I always watched wrestling, and even before that, I grew up watching superheroes. And I was like, man, I want to be one of these larger than life figures. And so I got into training around the time I was 12 or 13. And what it happened to coincide with the time that my cousin, who lived down the street from us, started dating a professional wrestler, which was super cool. So I got to see him around all the time. And then it was kind of just, once you get bitten by the bug, like that was it forever. I was always obsessed. And so in college, I started like interning in the weight room and switched my major. And then I got tuberculosis, which was insane. Like sophomore year, I got tuberculosis. Like,
Wow.
I've never heard anyone get, and I had to
Mhm.
go home and be on bed rest. And so for those 6 months, it actually turned out to be great because back then, before the internet, I was able to just order every book and course and certification out of the back of the magazines. And I got my first certification. Started training people that summer when I was 19. For whatever reason, like I really wasn't that good at training people, and I had no knowledge of business. But by the end of the summer, I was on pace to make six figures that first year for a variety of reasons that I could get into, or we could, whatever. But that was blowing up, and then a few years later, I decided to start writing. So in 2001, I started writing online. Then I started getting offers from all the magazines. Eventually, got my own column, the Hard Gainer column, and Men's Fitness for years. And then just to backtrack for a second, the first couple of years, I saved up every dime so that I was able to invest in some space, it was literally underground, it was in a basement. And every dime I made, I bought equipment with that money. And for the next 15 years, that was kind of what we did. 10 or 12 years in the original spot. And what we did was so different than what everyone else was doing. That's why I was able to have this massive growth, because back then you could only go to like Bally's or Gold's or whatever and kind of do, bodybuilding from the 80s, classes, whatever. And I came in when you'd walk in and NWA and Public Enemy was cranking, and we had all these signs like, making you feel not welcome. Like we put up a velvet rope with an edge and an attitude, but it was so different. I think great business advice for anyone, any small businesses, is this: make sure that this is not like doesn't look like, sound like, smell like, taste like anything else in your market, what anyone else is doing. Don't be desperate for sales. And we weren't. Like, if you came in and you didn't like it, we were like, yo, get the fuck out. You're not even welcome here, Like, and then what would happen is we bred such a culture with those guys that they would become the biggest walking billboards. And when people would come in, like, you had to earn your way in and earn the respect from those guys. So that was super cool. And, that was kind of how the business blew up. The brick and mortar blew up. Then getting into the magazines, I was putting out info that was really unique and unheard of at the time. I mean, we were doing sledgehammer and chains and sandbags and all that stuff long before anybody else was. We popularized the underground warehouse kind of gyms. And I always say that I invented group training, half jokingly, half not, because there really was only personal training, or you did an aerobics class at Bally's. There was no group training with strength training. And I was really the first person that I knew of that started doing that, simply because I had a bunch of high school and college athletes, and I was like, man, they would have more fun if they trained together. And then all of a sudden that just took off, and that became the model for the rest of our days, just kind of just, group strength training. I don't know how to keep going but that's kind of like the early days.
Where was that initial underground facility? What part of Jersey?
That was in Jersey, Warren, Central Jersey.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So, I've heard you talk about the story with TB that kind of decommissioned you for several months, and that kind of really spiked because you maximize that opportunity, right? I know you've talked about this at length, but I always think about Ben Bruno, right? I know you know him well. He's got a similar story where kind of he talks about a major back surgery, and he kind of took that time to learn as much as he can, and really that catapulted him. And then he went on to get that internship with Mike Boyle. But I'm wondering, not a lot of people maximize those types of opportunities, right? Where life just gives you gigantic lemons and you try to, maximize that. What do you attribute that to? Like, was it a parent, a mentor that kind of gave you that, hey, like, let's use this and learn as much as you possibly can and come out, rise from the ashes, if you will?
Yeah, I guess, probably some of that was instilled from my parents. I mean, I've just always been that way. That's why I have the word relentless tattooed. Like, I tend to never get too down about a loss or a failure, because I know that, like, recently I had a loss. I had a goal set and something went wrong. We did a few things and it was a loss, but I was so excited about it at the end of the week. And Jen was like, I can't believe you're like, I was like, yeah, dude, you learn so much more from a loss. I love this. Like, now I know what to do better. So anytime I have clients or friends that get down, seems like the end of the world. And you don't want to hear it the first day or so, but, you give yourself a little time, 48 hours, 72 hours later. It's like, look, things happen for a reason. Any cliche you want to think of, things happen for a reason, or the light at the end of the tunnel, the rainbow, all these things. And I do believe that anyone successful, that's one of the key attributes is, when you're down, when you take an L, you got to just, okay, how do I learn from this? How do I get better? How do I keep moving? What's the silver lining? Because if you stay down, you're dead. You're dead in the water. You got to just keep moving.
Right. So Jay, to dovetail on this concept of learning, right? You started at 12 years old. And what I'm interested in is, who were your mentors, right? What was your training program like at 12? And you're how old now? 40?
7.
47. All right. So you have almost 30 years of experience, right? So I'm interested in your training program at 12 and in 30 years, what have you learned? Like, what was that evolution of training like for you?
Yeah, so I mean, there was really no good information back then. Like
Right.
I don't think there were studies on strength training until like 2004 or 5 or something. Like there was no studies. There were studies on like Olympic athletes and power, but there was never anything about like, muscle growth, hypertrophy, things like that. Certain things here and there. But so back then, all you really had was like bodybuilding fitness magazines like Flex, Muscle and Fitness. And then what was good was finally in the back of Iron Man magazine. I can't even remember what the site was, but you could order older stuff from the 60s, from the 70s. And then eventually there was a guy who started selling like George Hackenschmidt and Arthur Saxon, like stuff from 1906. And that's when I really started to make progress. Because at first I was a 100-pound kid going from doing nothing to doing Flex Wheeler's 1992 workout 2 hours a day. It's like I'm not getting anywhere here. So initially, you didn't have a lot of good info, and it was just trial and error, and then speaking to people who knew more than you, which to this day still remains probably one of the greatest ways to learn anything. But then my training evolved. So eventually, first it was that high volume, high frequency bodybuilding type of deal. Then I got into all the old school stuff, and that made a huge difference. Way less focus on like isolation stuff, more compound movements, progressive overload, getting strong. Like they never talked about that in the bodybuilding magazines back in the 80s and 90s. So really focusing on getting strong, progressive overload, the right movements. Not overtraining. That was a concept that wasn't really talked about that much. Although eventually, once I got into that, I found my way back into the magazines and kind of got into like Mike Menser and Dorian Yates, who were more low volume, progressive overload kind of guys. And I literally have tried every single thing ever, over those 30 years. High volume, low volume, high frequency, low frequency, tried it all. And kind of, like Bruce Lee says, like took what was useful, rejected what was not. Yeah. I had a lot of success for years, though. I kind of got into powerlifting and Kirk Karwoski and Ed Cohn and their philosophies and Bill Kazmaier. Then that led me to Louis Simmons and Westside. And kind of a hybrid Westside model, conjugate model was what we used for. That was the longest, probably there was a good 7 to 10 year stretch where that was all we did exclusively. And I kind of modified it more for athletes and, more functional stuff. And then it's continued to evolve, over the last, especially since turning 40 over the last 7 years. Now it's just more, it's a lot smarter. There's way less risk involved, which honestly I wish I knew when I was 27. If I could go back 20 years ago, because then you just feel so much better. Right. Like a lot of times people see my stuff and they're like, "Oh man, I get it. I wish I knew this 10, 20 years ago." And yeah, so do I. It's not just that you're over 40 you trained like this. Like you should start preventative medicine, if you will, way back then. So now it's just about execution, like execution first and foremost, the right movements. So just because somebody, like maybe there's 100 articles that say the top 5 movements are bench press, overhead press, squat, deadlift with a bar, and I don't know, cleans or something, doesn't mean you should do them. Like everybody should do certain movement patterns, but everybody's got a unique structure that you need to figure out what works for you, what doesn't cause pain, what you can do, that you don't wake up the next morning feeling like you got hit by a bus. Like I'm 47 now, and I wake up every day. I'm like, wait, where's the pain? What happened? I don't understand. Knock on wood. What happened to all throughout my 30s, 20s? Every day I was like, oh God, this hurts. This hurts. This hurts. Because I was just training like an idiot. I was a meathead, and it was just pile more plates on the bar. Let your form go to shit. If you did 315 for 9 last week, you have to get it for 10, even if you only slept 4 hours and you're miserable and stressed out. So it's, listening to your body, perfect execution, and then taking that process of achieving mastery to every single rep. Like, how can I do this? Even though I've done this exercise 6 million times since 1987, how can I make it better than last week? What can I learn today? How can I, if I depress my scapula a little bit more there, actually that my shoulder feels amazing. Or if I don't exceed my active range here, like every single day, it's that process of achieving mastery. How do you get better? And what's cool is when my clients finally get that and it clicks, and they're let's say they're in their 40s, been training for 10, 20 years, like, oh, dude, this is the most fun I've ever had in training. Now I get what you're talking about. I love seeing that.
Yeah, Jay, you talk about execution with every rep, right? I think I've also tried this in the gym, and it's just so hard to stay in that flow. Like, what do you do specifically so that you're thinking about every single rep? I mean, if you're doing one or two, I would say, okay, it's really easy, especially if you're lifting heavier weight. But if you're going for a higher rep kind of workout, how do you stay in that type of flow?
Well, first of all, I don't recommend higher reps. I've always said for
Okay.
years, I mean, you can go back 20 years, I always say there's like a 5 to 8 rep range sweet spot. And until you've really gotten to the point where you have technical mastery, insane levels of focus, and the testicular fortitude to battle through a set of 12 or above without letting any of those things break down, without tapping out, then I would stick in that 5 to 8 rep range, because anything above, let's say 6 reps, there's always each rep above that, there's going to be a higher incidence of injury, a higher incidence of your form breaking down. Right. It's harder to focus. And if you're really dialed in to making sure everything maximal tension, like after 6, 8 reps, like that's really hard to stay focused there. So the injury risk goes up. And what I also think is higher reps cause more inflammation. They cause more systemic fatigue, a lot of things. So now I have clients. Yesterday I was on a coaching call, and I have a client who's close to 50, and he just in 2 weeks, his average rep range before we started was like 12 to 15, because you hear, oh, as you get older, do higher reps. And I was like, nah, I believe the opposite. I want you to do fewer reps and go heavier, actually. And he goes, like, and I got goosebumps to the point where, I love this so much that I almost teared up as I hear him saying it. He's like, dude, I have no joint pain in 2 weeks. And even I was like, I thought it was going to take a month or so. This is crazy. He goes, I used to have to wrap every single joint and walk around like the mummy. He goes, I haven't needed it. And I'm like, dude, that's insane. Like, that's awesome. Even though I know it and I could deliver these results, it's still like, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jay, I love that, man. There's so much awesome stuff packed in there. And, I think that some of the stuff that, of course, I've followed your work for the better part of a decade, if not more. And I felt like you've weaved in and out from being a specialist to generalist, to specialist to generalist. And something that you talk a lot about lately is kind of training the aging athlete. In fact, part of your newsletter this morning, I was reading where it was training people over the age of 40, something that, of course, you can relate to from personal experience, but also seems like, a lot of those folks have an affinity towards your type of training, kind of what you've described. So I want to ask about modifying. I mean, you've addressed the volume component of it, making sure you have mastery before you can add on more volume, before you can get more technical lifts and that kind of stuff. One of the things that is super hot right now is people tracking HRV, all kinds of these gadgets, whether it's different devices on your ring or excuse me, your finger or your wristwatch or whatever it might be. Is that something that you ever use? Do you use that type of data monitoring for feedback for maybe the aging athlete, or you recommend that?
I think it's a really good idea. I think it does depend on the person's personality. So what's funny is that we're discussing this because I have my Whoop on, which I have not had on in 4 or 5 months. So what would happen was that at the beginning, they sent me one and I was into it, and I used it for, I don't know, 8 months or something like that. And then I felt like I was like, all right, I'm kind of dialed in. I don't want to get obsessed with this. I don't like to rely on technology too much or too many things. And then I saw a lot of clients that were OCD that were freaking out about it every day. And I was like, dude, this is adding more stress. It's actually not helping you. We kind of know what worked in terms of meal timing, in terms of training, and getting your sleep dialed in. Why don't you throw that thing away for a few months and let's see what happens? And a lot of times they're like, yeah, I have less stress and anxiety now. So you got to kind of know your personality or who you're working with, know their personality. The reason I put it back on this morning was because I've been doing some things different with my diet recently. And it's actually not, it's not working, but I knew it wouldn't work anyway. It was just an experiment. So there's some things I want to tweak and optimize. And just because we were super busy and stressed out the last 2 weeks, my sleep hasn't been great. So I'm just going to use it probably for, 2 to 4 weeks as I get back on track here. And then I probably won't use it as much. But to your original question, I do think it's super valuable, at least for a period of time, at least for, 90, like if you were just starting out, like let's say a guy's whatever, 35, 48, whatever he is, and he hasn't really done anything serious in terms of a focused plan in a long time, I wouldn't have that be the first thing you do. I'd say, let's keep it simple. Let's make some small sustainable changes. Let's get you training. Let's tweak your diet a little, but you're not going to go from, a crappy diet to a Mr. Olympia prep diet. Let's just sub out some of the junk and make that more, whole food, organic, or even if I just said eat exactly what you're eating, but just make it yourself instead of getting it at a fast food place, like something super simple and sustainable. I do that, and then maybe let's see where we're at in 60 days, maybe 90 days. Okay, now we're really dialed in. We're good. Now let's get one of these, or get an Aura Ring, or get Joel Jameson's uh, Morpheus, something like that, and we could dial it in more. And then I think it becomes valuable where you can, then the person, the client, or even yourself, if you're not working with somebody, can prove to yourself, okay, kind of like studies, right? Like most people who are in the trenches, they do something for years, they talk to their colleagues, they know it works. Then we look at studies to validate the why and the how it works. Whereas kind of newbies and guys who don't have a lot of experience will just go on PubMed and say, oh, this is how everybody should train, or this is how everybody should eat. And it's like, no, you got to have the experience first to understand the why. I don't know. I feel like I'm going in circles here, but
Nah, dude, I love that. And I really want to emphasize that point. I think Darsh and I have talked about this online. So I think a couple of years ago, I kind of wanted to optimize my sleep regimen, right? I mean, that's in residency, that can be a bit challenging
Yeah.
as a, I think in pretty much any field, if you're trying to be successful, it is. And so I know Darsh is a fan of Whoop, and I initially just wanted it for my sleep. So I actually invested in the Aura Ring. Phenomenal tool, love it. But I haven't worn it in probably about a year now, because I went 2 years straight and I learned all the strategies that I needed to optimize. And I knew what worked for me. I knew the temperatures that I had, right? I have got an Uller and those kinds of things. And I knew but once I realized, after maybe about a year of consistently using it, there was a point that I was getting up and I was running to my phone just to check my sleep score, what percentage I have deep sleep. Putting aside the inaccuracy of some of those tools, I think that's super important. It goes back to your point about when, if it's adding stress, it's kind of like the Goodhart law, right? When that measure becomes a target, then it ceases to be a good measure. And if it teaches you, and the next time you're making a change and you kind of need that to kind of implement new strategies, and that's probably sufficient. And then ultimately, you talk about this a lot about how do you feel, right? That's like, because I think the biggest thing
is, it can throw you off if you wake up in the morning and you have a shitty score, then you allow it to creep in and dictate your day. Where every day, no matter what, I wake up and mentally I'm so fired up that I don't care if my recovery score is 3. Like, I'm going to dominate the first half of my day, and I don't even want to see what that is. Now, when I get to my workout, I have the experience to listen to my body, where if I start doing my ramp-up sets and my warm-up and I feel weak as could be, okay, then I won't push it as hard that day.
And you know what's interesting about this? This just happened to me last night, right? Actually, after a long day of work, long week, actually, I went to the gym last night. I got squats on the menu, and I didn't feel great going in. Went through my workout, went through the plyometrics, felt a little bit better, but I knew it didn't feel great. I was like, okay, I probably shouldn't push it. I got a little back tweak right there. PR'd though last night toward the end of the set. I still had probably 2 reps left in the tank, but I had that in the back of my mind. I was like, you know what? I wasn't feeling great. Maybe I should just dial it back. I haven't taken a day off in 7 days. And I wonder if, like, sometimes a little bit too much for your own good. You know what I mean? When you're invested in the science and that kind of stuff. And so, I think that's a really important point to emphasize for people is don't let these devices kind of anchor you to not do well just because the score says something, because first of all, they're not that accurate to begin with.
Right. That's so true. I mean, I'll say I think I've worn this for a year straight, and for me it's not because I'm obsessed with it. I'm very data driven, but I use it, like you said, to tune into my body. So there'll be days where I'll be at like 30% right recovery, or I'll be at 80%, but I'll be breathing so heavily, and sometimes when you're at 30%, your sympathetic system just takes over, and you feel like you're going to crush it at the gym. But then it allows me to be like, why am I 30%? What did I do last night that makes me 30%, right? Is there something I changed or tweaked? And then I kind of get connected to my breath, and I'm like, you know what? I think this is my sympathetic system just like revving up, and I'm not breathing as calmly as I do. And that kind of changes a little bit what I might do at the gym. Be on that lookout for, all right, let's not, try to stay focused in, be in that flow, kind of like what you talk about. But you're so right. I mean, it comes down to not obsessing over it, right? And still allowing your body to guide that you still might be able to crush it even if you're at 1%. And to Alt's point, there's been times where I PR'd where I'm at 20 and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I feel great right now. Let's go on like a 5-mile run and just do it. Right. Yeah.
All right. So Jay, staying on this thread of training, right? One of the things that you talk about often is sequencing exercises. I think for my exercise science aficionados, like, learning the basic principle of strength and conditioning, it's you're putting your compound lifts in the beginning. And for those who don't know, it's like squats, deadlifts, and stuff like that. You'll put that after you warm up, if you're doing some type of plyometrics, then you'll put that heavy strength movements. You typically advise people to maybe throw a couple of glute hams in, maybe some hamstring curls in, stuff like that, doing maybe isolation exercises prior to going through compound movements. Talk a little bit about that. Like, what's the genesis of that? And is that something that you recommend for most folks? Is it more for the aging folks? Like, what's that about?
Yeah, it's for everybody for sure. I wish I knew that years ago. There's nobody that's going to feel good doing 5 minutes of mobility drills and then jumping on a massive compound movement. Like it's not going to happen. There's no one that I've ever taken through a session that's not like, that's the best I ever felt. It's the first time I've done a squat variation with no hip or back pain. It's the first time I've done a compound pressing movement with no shoulder pain. It's the first time that my shoulders or elbows didn't hurt on a pull day, whatever. So the sequencing is, and what it does too is it eliminates not eliminates, but it reduces the amount of time you have to spend doing one of those warm ups. Because you could do, like on a squat day, you could do 20 minutes of band leg curls and body weight hip thrusts and all these things and split squats, and then do an hour workout. But I'm looking for time efficiency. Most people are looking for efficiency, but most people are busy. So I wanted to reduce the warm up time. So some of this just happened by accident. But I realized, so for example, and you could do this even if you wanted to train full body, you would still have to have a focus for each day. So what I'll do, so for example, on a push day, I'll never have anyone do a compound barbell press first. So we'll do your basic warm up, however long that might be. And the thing about that is, if you need a 20-minute warm up, something is radically wrong with your training. Like I'm 47 and I could walk into the gym today and go right to my first exercise and be completely fine and be pain free. I used to have to do 20-minute warm ups. In my 20s and 30s, I'd have to warm up forever. Now I don't have to because my training is so much smarter. So for example, on a push day, I'm going to do something. I always want to do in the warm up or as the first exercise. I always want to do something for stability and mobility. So we want to mobilize the shoulders a little. So we might just be doing something like scapular circles, internal, external rotation. But you could do those. Again, I could walk right into the gym. If a flat dumbbell press is my first exercise, I could walk in, grab 30s, do that in between. I'll do some stuff. And then I might do a half kneeling. Or even before I grab the dumbbells, maybe I'll do a bottoms up press. And I'm getting some stability stuff. Maybe I'll do a push up on a band. So I'm getting some stability stuff. We want to fire up stability and mobility first. That's huge. If you have more time and you need to foam roll or whatever, I have no problem with that. But make sure it's purposeful and targeted. Like don't just flail around like most people do. Know that like, okay, I know the long head of my triceps are usually tight. Let me just roll those for 2 minutes each, and then that's it. So you have 4 dedicated minutes that makes sense versus just rolling around with no idea what you're doing. So then what we'll do is we'll do something more joint friendly that's not compound. And I don't want you locked in, meaning on a bar, you're locked in. Even on a machine, you're going to be locked in, unless it's a really well-designed machine. So we'll do something like a dumbbell press or a ring push-up first. That mainly you get a pump, you feel better. It's not first, so you're just longer into your workout. Most people just notice later into their workout, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Even if you're an athlete and you play a sport, sometimes you notice, wow, by the second quarter, I feel so much better. I'm just more dialed in. Like people take more time. Your body takes more time than you think a lot of times. So we'll do something like that. And then maybe we'll go to a press. Or maybe I'll do 2 things. Maybe I'll do a ring push-up and a dumbbell press. Then we'll do some kind of barbell or machine press. You're going to feel exponentially better. And at first, yeah, if you're comparing apples to apples, your weights aren't going to be as much. But of course, because you're doing it second or third. But what happens is eventually it catches up. Eventually your body adapts. So like on a pull day, I never want anyone going overhead first. That's a risky, precarious position. So we're not going to do chin-ups first. We're going to do 1 or 2 row variations first and be super cognizant of not exceeding your active range. Meaning some people just way overstretch everything on a dumbbell press. They're always overstretching everything. So you want to know what your active range is. But we'll do 2 different row variations, get a pump. Then we can go overhead and do a chin up or a pull down or whatever it might be. So stretch position stuff I don't like to do early. And then let's say on a leg day, getting a hamstring pump is going to feel exponentially better when you squat. So you can do band leg curls, you can do seated leg curls, lying leg curls. If you're strong, you can do glute hams, do roller leg curls, whatever. Do a few sets of those, take it to another level, do hip thrusts, get a glute pump. Also, everybody, I would say across the board, needs to improve their ankle mobility. So you could do calves before you squat. Now when you get under the bar, you feel fantastic. And I remember watching back in the West Side days, I would watch Chuck Vogelpool, who's a record-holding lifter at West Side. And typically people thought at West Side or any powerlifting, okay, you just go in and you get under the bar and squat. That's your first thing. But Chuck would do like a million sets of glute hams, back raises, sled pushing, and rows before he squatted because now he feels fantastic. So walking in ice cold, no pump, and getting under any kind of bar or compound movement, you're never going to feel that great. You're always going to feel beat up. You're always going to get injured. And then, so for me, because I want to limit the amount of weight that I'm either going to put on my hands on a deadlift or on my back, I'll do leg curls, I'll do hip thrusts, and then I'll do a single leg squat variation, which could be a step up, a lunge, split squat, whatever, skater squat. Then I will do some kind of compound two-leg bilateral kind of movements. That could be a safety bar squat, that could be a hack squat, that could be a pendulum squat, whatever. And then it's pain-free. Then it's totally pain-free.
Yeah.
And then even if you want to take that concept and train 3 days a week, but you like doing full body, you like more frequency, have your push day and then throw in a row and a leg exercise at the end, a joint-friendly one. Have your pull day, then throw in a push-up variation and a leg exercise, like maybe a sled push, something that's super easy on your joints at the end. And the same thing with leg day, just do an inverted row and a ring push-up or something easy on your joints at the end. That's a way to do it. That's why I don't like full body in general as a theory, because you can't do the sequencing. I mean, if you're 22 and you have no joint pain, it's fine. But as you get older and you get more banged up, it becomes way more valuable.
So you typically prefer a push-pull split, or is it just upper-lower type thing?
I do push-pull legs myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there exceptions to this rule, though, for you or maybe for certain clients who might respond to the traditional, quote-unquote, way?
Nah, I would never put big compound stuff first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. That's good to know. No, I do like that. It sounds almost like kind of what I'm hearing is it's really a blend. It's a ramp up period. It's really a blend of, going from warm up. It's a seamless transition, which.
Yeah, I mean, because what I was saying before is it shortens your warm up, because instead of having to do all those things in your warm up, they're your work sets anyway.
Exactly.
Like you walk in, you do some ramp up and work sets on those exercises. And by the time you get to the next one, everything feels exponentially better.
Yeah. So I think what we've spent a lot of time talking about is kind of what I'm hearing is it's all about longevity training, right? That's what you're exceptionally passionate about. That's what both of us are all here about. We know a lot of these issues are chronic diseases, not only cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, stroke, but also musculoskeletal problems, right? That's both of us are musculoskeletal specialists here. And we see a lot of people with OA and knees, joints, things that you're talking about. And it's also kind of like a buzzword nowadays, right? And so one of the things you've recently talked a lot about is you don't do a lot of cardio in the traditional sense, whether it's steady state, maybe in high intensity interval training. And, there was a period a long time ago, maybe you had a whole cardio book called The Renegade Cardio. And as I recall, most of the stuff was HIIT training, right? And coming back to this concept of efficiency, most people tend to prefer that because you don't have to sit on a treadmill for a long time or elliptical, whatever, insert your favorite device. What we're learning from the literature, though, that this concept of zone true training or traditionally aerobic training is better when we look at mortality long term. What are your thoughts about that? How do you recommend it? I'm even curious I know you mentioned that for a while you didn't do any specific cardiovascular stuff, but when looking at for longevity, being healthy in your 80s, 90s, what are your thoughts?
Do it in one sentence. Do a ton of walking. That's the one sentence bite. I think so. For longevity, that would be my number one thing is do a ton of walking, hiking, get out in nature for all the other benefits, right? Like don't be inside on the stair climber. That would be insane. But in terms of, HIIT versus regular cardio, what's too much? Typically, from the dawn of fitness, people have done way too much cardio. You don't need anywhere near as much as you think. That causes more overuse injuries. That ages you faster, free radicals, overuse joint injuries, all the things. So the most misunderstood form of exercise to this day, which sounds crazy to say, but it still is strength training. Like people don't understand. The three of us understand, but the average person on the streets doesn't understand. They still think they should be doing HIIT classes or spending 5 hours a day, on a stair climber or whatever it might be. So I would say if you dialed in your strength training and you did a lot of walking, and then if you want to get on a bike or a rower or whatever for 30 minutes, I think you got to build. We could go back to great sprint coaches like Charlie Francis or whatever and talk about you need to have your aerobic base and build that and then put in some anaerobic stuff. But it's crazy to take an average person who walks off the street and goes into a class and they're doing the most high intensity intervals. It's like, dude, Usain Bolt wouldn't even be able to do that. What are you doing? So you need to look at, what is the biological cost of your training across the board, everything you're doing. What is the biological cost of it? And a lot of times, like we want training, fitness, exercise, whatever you refer to it as, to improve your life. Most people go into it with that, but the things they're doing, that's not really going to improve your life. That's actually aging you faster in every single way. So you got to be smarter about it. And overdoing cardio, no good. Now again, for longevity, I do think, like I said, walk a ton, get outside, and do 2-3 days a week. You should get your heart rate in that that Maffetone 180 minus your age range. I think is good. Super easy, because what people don't understand is we are all stressed out of our minds 24/7 to varying degrees, especially in 2021. I think everyone since March of 2020 has had a higher level of anxiety and stress than they had before, no matter who you are, no matter how mentally tough you are. So you need to realize that you're stressed because of that, because the state of the world. You're stressed because of work. Your body is stressed because you're not sleeping the way you should be. Your body is stressed maybe because you travel too much or whatever it might be. We have all these stressors. Training's just another one of those stressors. So if you're lifting 4 days a week hard, now you're gonna do HIIT. HIIT's the exact same thing as a lifting session, as a squat session or a deadlift session. So you got to ease into that. So build your aerobic base first with super easy, low intensity stuff that, again, to your point of longevity, has been proven now to, have stress reducing benefits. It helps you recover faster. It helps with cognitive function, obviously cardiovascular health improvements, things like that. Ease into it, and then if you need to do HIIT, I don't think anyone needs to do it, quite frankly. If you want to improve it, for your athleticism, whatever, great, definitely do it. You don't need it if you just want to feel better, look better, be in shape, improve your blood profiles, improve your testosterone levels, things like that. And for most people, I would say start with one session a week, like 10, no more than 20 seconds hard. Most people overdo it. They don't understand. They'll do, like, I'll say, hey, look at Olympic sprinters. They go 10 seconds, like Usain Bolt would sprint for 10 seconds, then rest 5 minutes. Why would you, and he's shredded, all those guys are shredded. Why would you think you're going to do a 40-second interval and rest for 20 seconds like a Tabata protocol or something? Like, you can't do that. That destroys your body. So I'm all about keeping things like smart and making sure there's a reason for it, and longevity is part of the focus.
It's funny you say that. I'm a sprinter at heart, so I'll be at the gym doing 20-second interval, run like a 200, and then I'll just take like 6 minutes, just go down like 2 miles per hour, and you just get stares at the gym, and people are like, "I'm gonna beat this guy." Like, this guy thinks it's like, you guys have no idea, and it's exactly what you're saying, And there's always that common thought that look at the body types on the cardio machines and look at the body types. People look in the mirrors lifting weights. Which one do you want to be? Right in the end,
right? Yeah.
Well, Jay, on the note of things that we need, we all know that one of the pillars of health is going to be nutrition. Now, we're not going to dive into nutrition because we'll be here forever. But I do want to get your general thoughts. I think that, a lot of times people will come to me for pain, insert pain, right? And, we'll talk about what type of treatment options we have. Of course, therapy, which I look at as rehab, which I look at as exercise, is kind of what it is. We'll talk about that. And I imagine people come to you a lot of for the similar reasons, right? That they want to feel better. And you'll use training as one tool. But we also know is what we put in our mouth is adversely or positively going to affect their performance inside the gym, outside the gym, every which way you can imagine. How do you broach the topic of nutrition with somebody? Because maybe somebody comes to you and when you evaluate their current program, they might be doing a lot of things right. But the biggest lever for that person might be what they're putting in their mouths. How do you broach that topic with them? That, hey, I know you came to me for X, but we need to address maybe most of our energy is on Y right here.
Yeah. I mean, It is nutrition is the most important factor, really. I mean, sleep I would say is the most important factor, then nutrition, then we can worry about training. If those things aren't dialed in, let's not even worry about it. Sleep would be first, but uh, yeah, I mean, it's a cliche, but you are what you eat. Food, you are what you eat. Food is the best medicine. All these things. So I just try to explain to people that your gut health really controls everything. So let's, as much as we can, eliminate the foods that are going to be known disruptors to gut health. But again, if someone comes in and they're eating 5 egg McMuffins for breakfast and a milkshake, like I'm not going to do a complete 180. I'd say let's how we could clean this stuff up. Can you make that at home? Can you make it with more high quality ingredients? Can we cut out the industrial seed oils? Can we cut out the sugar and the refined foods? Like I have a guy who lost 100 pounds and he ate pasta twice a day for a year. He's super Italian. He's in his 50s and he's like, yeah, I just can't give up pasta. And I was like, all right, we don't have to. Let's do it. And he was eating like gluten wheat pasta and he was fine. And then eventually I got him to switch over to like rice pasta and stuff. And then he felt even better. But it's going to be really hard if you try to make someone do an extreme, 180 from the get-go. So we try to just make some smart changes, let people know about the impact of gut health, and it really that influences everything. Oh, you have joint pain? Let's improve your gut health. You have skin issues? Let's improve your gut health. You have cognitive function, your immune system, you get sick all the time, we got to improve your gut health. So, just kind of getting people to understand that and then helping them make smarter choices. And then, of course, the easiest way to convince anyone to get buy-in, to influence, to get them behind what you're doing is for them to prove it to themselves. Eat the way I'm telling you for 30 days and tell me if your elbows and shoulders don't feel better. Tell me if you're not having that weird little runny nose, if you're not getting brain fog, if you're not having to run to the bathroom after you eat certain foods. And they're like, dude, I never felt this good. Then they're bought in, then you got them forever. And for me, for anything across the board, like if you looked at anyone's business, you would say, okay, there's 100 things you can do like these 5 and cross off the other 95 and do them repeatedly forever. If you want to be a really good athlete, what are the 5 things you should do forever? So I like same thing with nutrition, like just keep it super simple. Here's a small pool of foods that you should eat all the time, repeatedly, get used to them, and then eventually once you do that, you don't really have cravings for other stuff anymore. The first 30 days are going to be hard. Maybe it's 2 weeks. Everybody's different, but you're going to have these cravings for junk food, and then eventually it goes away. You don't care about it anymore. You feel better. So the foods I like to recommend for most people as a starting point is like a good paleo kind of general, maybe paleo plus rice, But again, if someone's eating gluten and sugar and dairy all day, I'm fine with that too. Let's just clean it up a little bit, and then slowly over time we'll eliminate some of those things. But for me, if I want to feel best, it's meat, a small amount of really well cooked veggies, fruit, yams, rice, avocado. That's basically it,
Right. I love that. It's really about meeting the patient or the client where they're at, right? If you're on the opposite side and you're saying, well, this is kind of where you need to be, I need you to jump in there right now. That's a really easy way not to get buy-in and to lose that client or patient.
Totally.
Yeah. Another thing that's trending right now is intermittent fasting, right? We talk about this a lot, and I think it's probably more trending because I think the medical literature is finally caught up to it. Some people might not know you wrote a book on this over a decade ago. And the premise of that was that time restricted eating, right? You had talked about, if I remember correctly at the time, you mentioned that for most people, it's best to anchor their, fasting window to their sleep and start eating maybe at noon, and, last meal would be 8, right? That's kind of what you had said in the Renegade Diet. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I think it's the opposite of that now.
So that's my question for you, right? Some of the evidence recently come in, and a lot stemmed from Dr. Sachin Panda's work, is that we're more insulin sensitive at nighttime. So I'm wondering, I know you recently mentioned that that's not something that you are doing personally now. And if you want, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts about that mixed with stress, high stress environment, but just the insulin sensitive portion. If that is a strategy that works for somebody, like, what are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you've changed your mind about? Curious to hear your thoughts.
So I have a few different thoughts on this. So first of all, just to start with, what we talked about is having your eating window start later in the day. If we really look at evolution, you would have done, kind of what you were alluding to there, and what I was saying. I think it's the opposite. Eat throughout the day, throughout daylight, and then once it got dark, you'd stop eating. I think even back then, I would have probably said that's a better way to do it. Just from a social perspective, it doesn't really work, right?
Yeah.
Now, in terms of fasting for the first 4 hours of your morning or 6 hours of your morning or whatever, I still think that's okay if that works for you. For a lot of people, it's great. It just, not because there's anything magical about it. Like you could say autophagy and all these things are happening and whatever. We could argue if that's really happening or not. But it simply just reduces your eating window so you don't eat as
Mm-hmm.
much. The problem is if you're someone who's chugging tons of stimulants all day, you don't sleep well, you're an overthinker, you have high anxiety, you have high stress, it's just another stressor, which is what I was
Mhm.
talking about before in terms of
Yeah.
cardio and all these things. Like, we don't think about all these things as stressors. Like, we think, losing your job or super hard workout, that's a stressor. We don't consider all these things. So not eating all morning, just you send yourself into that cascade of stress hormones of cortisol and adrenaline, which is why you feel great. You feel like Sam Kinison. You're like, oh my, I'm freaking out. But that's because, again, you're just running on cortisol and adrenaline, which is not great. So, and Darsh, you alluded before to kind of sympathetic and parasympathetic.
Mhm.
Most times today, most people are in that sympathetic fight
Yep.
or flight all the time, and you get addicted to it. You kind of love it.
Right.
But man, things start to break down eventually. Like, that's not going to end well for most people. Eventually, you're going to get sick, you're going to get burnt out, you're going to get hurt. So we got to be more on the other side and do things. Live in a way, eat in a way. Uh, you know, uh, Consume less stimulants, things like this. Sleep better. That are going to put you more in that state. So again, if you're the right person, the right personality type, it's probably great. If not, you're going to have, and if you're at the opposite end of the extreme, like I have personal friends and clients that are really high strung, really amped up.
Mhm.
And I go, dude, are you nuts? You can't be doing that. You got to
Yeah.
eat the second your feet hit the ground in the morning. And so I get them eating a big meal of like meat and potatoes and eggs and everything in the morning. And within a week, they'll be like, oh, dude, you saved my life. I feel so much better. I used to be like on the verge of a nervous breakdown from 8
Yeah.
till noon all day. So now I forgot the original. I think I went off on 10 different things there.
No, that was
No.
great.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
you answer.
Go for it all.
Sorry, go ahead, Darsh. Go. You're for it.
We're out of here. No, it's fine. No, I was just gonna say it's funny because in the wellness industry now, right? I think we have the worried well, right? Is what EC Sinkowski kind of says, and so many of us are so hyper tuned into making sure we get the 3 eggs in without the egg yolks, and we're sleeping by
Mhm.
7:30 p.m. and that in itself is actually just causing more stress and actually just hindering
Yeah.
our progress. And it's
Yeah.
interesting you kind of bring up, this change of direction you might have had in terms of fasting and things because I was, back, I guess, like 90s, early 2000s, I was like, Mom, Dad, why are you guys fasting? And me and Alt talk about this part of our religion. And they would fast. They'd be like, that's terrible for you. What are you doing? And then, nowadays they're like, what do you mean, Darsh? Like, I thought fasting was bad for you. Now you're doing it. Right. So it's funny how, science evolves and things. But I used to be one of those worried well, I'd say even probably like a year ago. And what's worked for me now is kind of just mixing and matching. I was telling Alt, there's days I'll do a monk fast. I'll do 36 hours. Then I'll eat healthy. I'll eat a breakfast some days. Some days I'll just time restricted feeding. And what that allows me to do is not worry about the day to day. Because if I skip something or I miss something, hey, it's fine. In the end of that week, this comes back to, I think you had a recent post about those 3 things that work, and one was sleep, being in a slightly caloric deficit, and building for hypertrophy or muscle building. And if you just have these general rules and people just follow these general rules, you can stop being so hyper aware, right? I think
Yeah.
that's almost one of the keys to longevity and also feeling well day to day.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you brought that up. You said, what was it saying? The worried well?
The worried well, yeah, we got it from EC Sinkowski. She's a nutritionist who's doing awesome work.
Which is so spot on because so many people, like health and fitness information has really become the bane of their existence, and it's actually making them unhealthier. And a lot of times I'll answer questions and people say, dude, how many hours a week do you do this? I'm like, nah, I don't.
Yeah.
What about this? I don't. And they go, what food scale do you use? And I go, I don't. They go, well, how many carbs? I go, I don't know. I just eyeball it. I know exactly what's going on. So yeah, becoming OCD about it is
Mhm.
really dangerous. Really adds more stress, and I think doesn't help you in any way. I had a point I was going to make there, but I totally. Oh, so I was on a coaching call the other day, and one of our guys, he's in his late 30s, and he was he was starting to make all these changes like he was 95. And I go, dude, like I love the focus on longevity, but I think you're taking it a little too far. Like you could say, oh, if I want to live to 110, I'm going to eat a ultra low calorie diet and fast all day and do all the things. And I'm like, what quality of life is that? And I think you're a little young for that. Like the Rock's eating 1,000 grams of carbs a day. I don't think he's losing his memory
Right.
and he's, falling apart. Like, you got to take into consideration like what your lifestyle is like and all these things. Again,
I,
because like we said, it just becomes this OCD horrible loop that you get caught in.
Yeah, I just wrote a tweet on this, right? Like so many of us are focused on living to 100, 110, but if you're not living and
For
loving your
what?
day, if you're not loving your day to day, what's going to change when
Yeah,
you're 100? Like why would you want to live longer for worse,
right.
right? And mentally, emotionally. So I guess I want to kind of shift in terms of how do you talk to people? How do you converse with people and influence this change with them, right? That conversation with that person you're just talking about, what are those approaches you have? Because for me, this is a huge passion of mine is consulting, changing people's lifestyles, but for the right reasons and actually gauging to their psychology.
Hmm. Um, so I have to fight my nature as an aggressive Northeast Italian and kind of come down to their level. Um, but I think it's super important for anyone who's doing something like that to really spend some time mastering people skills. So, read How to Win Friends and Influence People. But not only just read it one time, like read it 50 times and then make it your thing to become a student of human nature. Like, why do people do things? What influences their decision? Why do they think this way? And if you've been paying attention, since March 2020, you can learn all you need to know about influence and human nature and fear and groupthink and all these things. Like all the lessons were there since March of 2020. So, but you have to be again aware of it and like, oh, I get it. Like always be learning. Anytime you're out for coffee with someone, anytime you go to a party, anytime you're at an event, just be hyper aware, studying what's going on and take notes and really become that student of human nature and why people think certain ways and why they do certain things. I think that's a skill that's so essential. I think now in our current landscape, because so many people are going to have so many crucial, important, uncomfortable conversations for the foreseeable future,
Mhm.
is become really good and skilled at influence. Like influence and persuasion are going to be the two skills of the future. So any of Cialdini's stuff, Cialdini has influence, which is a little bit of a harder read, and then he's got Yes, 50 Scientifically Proven Ways to Be Influential, I believe it is, which is a great one. The Soulful Art of Persuasion by Jason Harris. Any kind of books like that are going to be really important to help you not only with clients, with patients, but just again, like there's going to be a lot of things that people are fighting for, and that are important that you want to have. Crucial conversations is another one. I think you can never go wrong. Like just getting better at this and learning all the things that go into that.
Yeah. So, Jay, I mean, you've talked about the pandemic, how just, it's completely changed the way that we practice, right? I mean, it's certainly changed the way that we're practicing medicine, more teleguided technology. And I think maybe even in the just health and wellness fitness industry, I think a lot of the online business coaching model. I mean, you've been doing that for what, like maybe a decade now, more than that, maybe.
Wow, I started selling stuff online in 2003.
Okay, so almost 2 decades.
Yeah,
So, would you say that the majority of your coaching is now online, or do you still have a
yeah,
brick and yeah?
online. Yeah.
So, I think again, because of social distancing rules, it's kind of that slope has gone, exponentially has risen, right? A lot of people are jumping into online coaching, social media coaching and influencing, quote unquote. And it can be a powerful tool, but it can also be harmful, right? Depending on your relationship with it, much like anything else, I suppose. Nevertheless, we have a lot of people jumping in, maybe because the barrier to entry is so low, but
Mm,
there aren't a lot of people who have been able to be successful, right? Whether it's because of connecting, like kind of you just touched on,
yeah.
or for whatever reason. I mean, so I know you speak about this. You sell coaching stuff on it, so I don't want you to disclose all your secrets. But I guess what I'm asking is, what's the recipe? What are maybe a few things that these folks who are trying to jump in are missing the ball on? Why are there so many people jumping in, but very few Jay Ferruggias, if you will?
So in other words, what do you think it takes to be successful with any kind of online
Sure.
coaching
Yeah. Yeah.
consulting?
That's you said it much more eloquently than I did, I guess.
So first of all, you got to figure out if you're just general right now, like you're never going to make it.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was always a bad idea, but you could get away with it 10 years ago, 20 years ago. you got to be ultra specific. So if someone sold a book on time management, that they could sell that for $19. But if it was time management for health professionals, maybe it's $99. But if it's time management for shift working ER doctors or something like that, now it's like $1,000 course because it's so specific. So I'm speaking to
Hmm.
the audience. So you want to get ultra specific on what you do, who you help, what their pain points are, and be able to kind of articulate those things. Because again, if it appeals to everyone, it appeals to no one. And people these days, they're overwhelmed with so much information. They're scrolling all the time. They're getting bombarded with commercials if they're watching TV. So it has to speak directly to that person, their pain point, their problem, and why is your solution better than everything else. And then you never want to be a commodity, no matter what you're doing. Being commoditized is just a race to the bottom. So if you play the price game, you'll always be dead in the water, unless you have the budget of a Nike or a Coke or a Walmart. For the most part, all those type of businesses will go under. They will go out of business. Where no matter what happens to the economy or the world, things like a Mercedes Benz or a Louis Vuitton or something like that are always going to do well. High price services, high price events are always going to do well because those types of people that have a lot of money will always have a lot of money and always be able to afford what you're offering. And there's always going to be three things, no matter what happens, no matter where we are in the world, no matter what happens to the economy. People are always going to want to spend a lot of money for health, wealth, and relationships. There's lots of pain with those three things. So, you got to consider that. If you just come out and go, oh, I know how to help people lose fat. It's like, great. So does every other guy on Instagram and 50 guys I just walk down the street, walk past on the street now too. And they all have a $19 a month app for me to buy. So how do you really differentiate? And then I would say too, the second thing that's really important, I did this from day one in my gym, which is why we were successful. Like I said earlier, it's got to look, smell, feel completely different, but it's got to be personality based. So you have to double down on your personality. What makes you unique? What are your weird quirks? What are you interested in? People want to buy. People don't generally, especially nowadays, they don't want to buy from a big corporation or a faceless entity. They want to buy from you because they know that you like the same music and you like the same jokes and you make the same references and you battle against the same things. All this is super important. So you got to double, triple down on your personality because that, at the end of the day, that's what makes you unique. It's customer experience. Sure, that's one huge way to differentiate, but your personality is what's going to get people in the door. So I think, I could go on about this
Yeah.
forever, but
No, I absolutely love that, man. But I do think that there's one thing. I know this is not what you're saying, but one thing that's worth clarifying for people is that, we've had many folks come on here and just in our conversation talking about the importance of being a generalist before we become a specialist, right? For people in the medical industry, like some of the older physicians that you work with, right? The trend that, if you don't know this, Jay, now is when we're coming out of residency, most people end up going into fellowship now. It's probably been the trend for maybe the last decade. So people who were practicing maybe the last 20, 25 years ago, they'll kind of poke fun and say, oh, okay, so if you see the right arm, you don't see the left arm. You know what I mean? Like making joke and people
yeah.
being subspecialized, which is kind of what I'm doing, and Darsh might as well. And I had David Ote come on here. I think a couple of folks talk about the importance of being a generalist. And I don't remember where I heard this quote from, but it's definitely, maybe it was Boyle, maybe it was Cressy, talking about, you need to understand the entire dimensions of the box inside before you can learn how to step outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that people kind of forget is I got to think outside the box. I got to think outside the box because that's what's going to sell. But they have no idea what the box looks like on the inside. And we're thinking all that. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts on that, actually.
You have to be a generalist at first when it comes to anything. If you're going to start your own business, you have to know how to do everything. You have to know how to write copy and do all the things. So with any kind of health, fitness related endeavor, you have to know a decent amount about training, a decent amount about mobility, a decent amount about cardio, conditioning. If you're going to train athletes, you need to know all that stuff, nutrition. But eventually, you need to hone it in and specialize on one thing. There's very few people that are going to be ultra successful as a generalist. Like if you want to get your teeth fixed, you don't just go to your local doctor. You're going to go to a dentist. Then if you have a specific problem, you're going to go to an orthodontist. Right. Then even more specific, there might be someone higher up that specializes in this type of Invisalign for this type of person. Like you're always going to trust the specialist more. And inside my industry, looking at colleagues and friends of mine, like Brett Contreras was here for years when he did what we all did. And then he said, nope, glutes. And then his business 10X. And Cressy was here until he said, oh my God, forget all that general stuff. I'm the shoulder guy. And then he took shoulders to baseball. And now he's a strength coach for the Yankees. So there's never an example, unless you don't know what the fuck you're doing and you screw it up, but there's never an example of someone who goes from a generalist to a specialist and doesn't make more impact and more income. It's always the way to go long term, but to your point, don't do it at first. The same reason I wouldn't advise a 6-year-old kid to try to be Tiger Woods or the Williams sisters. Play all the sports, and then when you get to 16 or 18, hone in on one. That's the proven path. Those two examples are the exception to the rule.
I love that. So coming back to the online business thing, there's a lot to positive that can come from it. Clearly, you are the epitome of that, but what are the downsides to it? What do you not like about the whole online fitness, health, and wellness model?
If that's all you ever did, you wouldn't have the real world experience. So you would have no idea what to do when problems come up. You would have no understanding of all the things that people do in the gym. You don't develop the necessary. It's hard to develop relationships online. It's hard to. I mean, quite frankly, if the three of us did this in person, Darsh and I would have a much closer relationship forever versus this, where the reality is on Zoom and online and everything. It's they're not even in the same stratosphere. It's just that it is what it is. Like you can't connect as well. And again, you just don't get the same experience. Like in the gym, you're reading someone's body language, you're seeing the mistakes that they make, and you're seeing too where, oh, when I say that, they have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. I got to dumb it down a little. Whereas if you're just spitting shit out online, sometimes you don't have that real world feedback. Like I'll even be at dinner with friends sometimes and I think they've heard me say the same things a million times, but I look at them and they're like, oh, that blank stare. They don't know what I'm talking about. I got to dumb this down more. So I think there's just so many essential life skills and the people skills that I was talking about before, and just what goes wrong. You don't learn that online. So anything you're doing, I think, is always going to be better if you have some real world in-person experience.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many things that you just cannot replicate through a screen. And you said it so perfectly. Well, man, this has been absolutely incredible. I want to thank you so much for your time, dude. I mean, it's just, I've been looking forward to this such a long time. I can't remember how many years it's been since we finally had a face-to-face.
Yeah.
Again, just because, you're doing so many amazing things and you're a super busy guy. So I do want to thank you for your time. I think this has been super informative.
Thank you, guys.
It's been fun. But before we let you go, I want to ask, man, you've been crushing it for the last 25 plus years. And I have no doubt for the next 25 years, you're going to continue crushing it. But I do want to ask you, man, what's next for you? Future directions, something you're super stoked about for the next year or 2 years that's coming up?
I think nothing shocking. Kind of just what we discussed is I'm still trying to just get better at the basic things every day. So I want to continue to grow the podcast. I want to continue to grow our coaching programs, get even, just better at those things. I love speaking and doing events. I just had the chance to speak recently in Seattle, and it had been a long time since I was on a stage. So I love doing that. I constantly want to get better at those things. And I just wake up excited every day, not for some new grand thing that's coming. It's like, man, I could just get better at all the small things that I do repeatedly every day. I can make people feel better. I can improve my relationship building skills. I could continue to do what's not natural for me, is to try to be better at communicating and being more charismatic and pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Because, for 30 plus years of my life, I was super insecure and shy and socially awkward. So I love pushing myself every day in that. And then I know that without even meeting Darsh or anyone, he has so does everyone, anxiety, stress, something he's unhappy about, something he's insecure about, something he's struggling about. And so when I wake up every day, I like to kind of have that external focus on other people. Whereas for so many years, it was like, oh, how can I get better? How can I make more money? How can I get more jack? And I've kind of, taken, there's so many quotes about it where, Muhammad Ali says, service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. Or Dr. King talking about anybody can be great because anybody can serve. And that doesn't mean, like, sometimes people misinterpret that like, oh, I don't have all this money to donate, or I don't have that much time to go work at the shelter all week. Well, it's like, no, I could serve someone by making them smile. I could serve someone or, be of service to them just by engaging them, just by making eye contact with them. And, telling them a joke or noticing something about their sneakers or something and talking about them. So I wake up excited to do that every day, to make other people feel good. When I go to the gym, I just want to get better every day. Nothing like huge or anything. I just like to focus on simplicity and basics, and how do I do these things repeatedly but better every single day,
Jay, yeah, I just want to thank you as well, man. I mean, that's an underrated perspective that more and more people in this world need, man. Well, getting 1% better every day, waking up with gratitude, and waking up how are we going to change the world just through service? And it's the small thing. So thank you so much for that. And again, anyone that comes onto this podcast and brings up books, it's not a like, it's an automatic love. So thanks for doing that. Where can people find you, man? I know you've got a lot of social media, you got a podcast. List those things out for us.
J.fit is the website, j.fit. And then I'm most active on Instagram at Ferruggia, and Renegade Radio on iTunes.
Awesome, man. And then the last question we ask everyone, man, is how do we add the health back in healthcare?
Oof, yeah. How many hours you got there?
That's usually the response we get.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I don't know. It would probably be a totally different answer in February of 2020. Mm-hmm. Shit, man, I don't know. Is it too late? I don't know. It's like, I think the reality is it's like anything else. People have to take personal responsibility. I mean, long before 2020, I would always say, no one's coming to save you. Like, nobody owes you anything. You have to take responsibility for everything, for your health, for your fitness, for your finances, for your relationships. Like Jocko talks about, 100% extreme ownership. Wherever you're at in life, it's on you. And now this might be, for some odd reason, this might be controversial to say nowadays, but a simplistic view of how your immune system works that nobody wanted to talk about for the last 2 years is like, I know every time I've ever gotten sick, I knew why I got sick. It wasn't like, wow, what happened? It was just, because I barely slept more than 4 hours the last 3 nights in a row. I drank a bottle of vodka. I was stressed out of my mind. My recovery score was 3, but yet I trained like a savage for 3 days in a row and took 4 flights during that time. Yeah, of course I got sick. So like, if the 3 of us we're hanging out at a party, and I grabbed your drink by accident and drank it, and you were like, "Oh, dude, I'm sick." If I hadn't done any of those things, I'd be sleeping well, managing stress. I'd be like, "Oh, that's cool. I know 100% I'm not going to get sick. Maybe I will, but for the most part, we know why we get sick and why we don't." But if Darcy were like, "Oh, dude, I'm sick as a dog," and I was like, "Oh, I just did all the other things. I slept 4 hours." They're like, "I'll probably be sick in 48 hours." You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
These simple things, like, you need to take responsibility for everything first and foremost. I think that's been forgotten about a lot. And then, again, my answer in January 2020 would be like, man, let's teach people nutrition. Let's teach people all these things instead of just being so motivated and inspired and financially motivated to just prescribe drugs. Let's go back to, what Socrates and people like that talked about. But I don't know, guys. You're in a better position to fix it maybe than I am. I don't know. Right now, it's not looking good.
No, man. I think the basics is driving home, and as most people have seen by the logo, I think kind of the things that we've touched on. You got to address the basics first, and nobody does that better than you, man. Thank you so much, Jay. Really appreciate it, man.
I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Jay. If you like what you heard, I highly recommend you go check out his show, The Renegade Radio. You can also find him on all social media platforms, and I promise it'll be worth the follow. Also, for my doctors, remember the story has changed. Visit financialresidency.com/locum story to see if a locum tenens assignment is right for you. It's here you'll find the unbiased answers you're after, so you can decide if locum tenens is your next chapter. And before you sign out, please remember the important disclaimer that everything in this podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not constitute the practice of medicine, nor should it be construed as medical advice. No physician-patient relationship is formed, and anything discussed in this podcast does not represent the views of our employers. We recommend that you seek the guidance of your personal physician regarding any specific health-related issues. However, if you enjoy the show, please be sure to subscribe, review, and share with anyone who you think will gain value from this. And until next time, thank you for listening.